Welcome everybody to the Fantasy Golf Insider Webcast and Podcast. I'm Jeff Bergerson, joined as always by my partner, Zachary Turcotte. If you haven't signed up for FantasyGolfInsider.com's premium package, we encourage you to do so. Now we have the European package available for those who want to add that to their existing PGA Tour package. This broadcast is also available in podcast form on iTunes and Stitcher. Be sure to go on there if you want to listen to it. Be sure to give us a 5-star review. And also on our YouTube, subscribe to our channel and be sure to get our webcast as soon as it comes out every week. Before we recap last week's tournament, Zachary, we have some shout-outs to go over this week because we had a lot of winners last week. So I'm going to rattle through some that we heard from. I'm sure I'm missing some, so don't be upset if we missed you. But Larry Crudup, whose nickname is actually Worm, had a big week last week. That's a solid nickname. Nick, his nickname is Guru Nick. Our buddy Alan Klutz had a big week last week, and Alan actually won like $20,000 GPP last year. And Alan said he's excited because this week he's moving to North Carolina and getting out of New York so he can play on DraftKings.
Is that why he moved?
Yes. So he's super excited. Terrence Frederick, Chad Crinzy, Austin Greenway, Jeff Townsend all let us know that they had big time success last week. So congratulations, guys. Keep up the good work. Keep working hard on researching. We also heard from a lot of people who had success in the first week of the Euro Tour last week, Zachary. If you haven't signed up for our Euro Tour package, I would recommend people do so because now is a great time. Most people don't know much about the European Tour or its players, and we can take advantage of that. We have the information. We use the same great tools that we use for the PGA Tour, sportsbook odds versus pricing, tournament history, current form. We have Perry writing our European Tour preview now, which is very exciting. He knows a lot about the European Tour.
Yep.
I will also offer my hardcore core for the European Tour as well every week.
And we'll have a model posted.
And we will have the model up now. So be sure to sign up for that if you haven't already. There should be some dead money in GPPs on DraftKings now.
Don't let it be yours.
Don't in its infancy, at least for a while. Great plays were ridiculously low owned last week. I saw several, and actually Chris Wood, who won the tournament, I actually mentioned in my Crystal Ball article for 2016. Yeah. So if you had read that and had him last week, you were very happy.
The big guy, yeah.
Yes, sir. So also, I wanted to make sure as we tape this on Memorial Day, Zachary, that we give a special shout out to those folks who served our country or who are serving our country to make it a better place and a safe place and serve on our behalf. So both my grandfathers served in wars. I have a lot of family and friends who serve our country these days. And a little known fact for you guys, if you didn't know, Zachary actually graduated from the Air Force Academy and was in the Air Force for many years, actually, went overseas. So you want to tell them a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was a pilot for about 10 years or so, flying the tankers and then the Predators. And we're going to do a very special shot of the week. Back when I was at the Academy, my first year when we enter our original squadrons, I had the pleasure of serving with Mark Graziano, who then graduated in my class of 2000. And we actually roomed together up in North Dakota after we finished our pilot training days. And Mark was one of the brightest guys I knew. He studied engineering when he was in school. He went on to fly the U-2 after the 135. He was in test pilot school. And in 2009, he actually had a malfunction with his aircraft and the plane went down and Mark passed away. After Mark passed away, he was one of the smartest guys that I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. The guy built literally everything within our apartment, from the kegerator fridge that we had, all of our furniture. He built his bedroom set, he built drawers. I mean, he was just a mastermind at putting things together or blowing them up, as he enjoyed doing. But one of the things that his mother sent me after he passed was this little ingot here. He used to collect all kinds of scrap metal and things for different projects. And I always kind of bothered him. I said, well, what are you keeping all this junk for? What are you going to do with it? He said, oh, I can melt it down, and then when I'm ready to use it someday, I'll put it together and I'll be able to reform it. I said, how are you going to melt this stuff down? And so what Mark did, he actually went out and he built his own foundry. and he melted down just pound after pound after pound of scrap metal. And then when he passed away, all these little ingots were left. So his mom sent this out to me. His call sign as a pilot was Dash. And so every year around this time of year, it was May 21st of 2009 when he passed away. So every time this time of year rolls around, especially Memorial Day, I always think about Mark. So
cool.
We'll do our shot of the week to Dash.
To Dash and all the veterans out there and those people who serve our country. That was a good shot of the week. Good story too, Zachary. Obviously, less importantly, but should we recap last week's DEAN and DeLuca?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. As we often say, it behooves you to fade the highest price guy. Jordan Spieth last week, although he won it, you didn't necessarily need him because the winning rosters in the 33 and the 300 did not even own Jordan Spieth.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Which was pretty incredible. But when Jordan Spieth gets on a roll, it's pretty crazy
when
to
he
watch.
when he hit a 32-foot par putt on 8 yesterday, I thought, I'm in trouble now.
Yeah.
I had him faded across the board. I was just crossing my fingers, just hoping he would just hold in place there around 4th, maybe fall back a shot or two.
Yeah.
But when he drilled that 32-footer, it just ignited him for the rest of the way. And he made like a 20-foot birdie putt a couple holes later on 10, and then it was just game on. He makes the birdie on 16. He holds out at 7. I mean, it was like, come on.
Yeah.
And I had a bad feeling it was going to go that direction once he got going. Because the first day, if he was going to have trouble, it was going to be the first day.
Right.
When he hit 33% of fairways and 80% of greens.
Yeah.
And that was incredible. So he still was struggling to find the fairway. But, once again, the iron play was there for him. And then
obviously
his putter,
the putting.
he turned it on and ran away from it. And you looked at the other guys who were competing against him. You knew Webb Simpson wasn't going to be there at the end of the day on Sunday. And you absolutely knew Ryan Palmer was not going to hold up. When he missed the 3-footer on 18 on Saturday to end the day, I mean, it felt like somebody just stuck a knife in my chest as I watched that happen. I couldn't believe it. I knew that shot would come back to hurt him, although he ended up losing by about 4 shots. And he was in control. He had a couple shot lead, and then I think he just eased up a little, or else he got a little nervous. The 8th hole was pretty ugly where he put it into the sand, and then the sand shot was just terrible with his wedge. He put it within about 20 feet or so, and then he bogeys after Spieth hits his birdie. And from there, he was done. I think mentally he was just shot after Spieth made the gain on him there. It looked like Harris English might make a little bit of a run. And then
especially on the first hole.
Yeah, he hits that eagle right away, but then he had a water ball a little later on. Rallied back after that pretty well, but couldn't put up a fight down the stretch. It's just one of those days where you feel Spieth. I could feel it coming on Saturday. I just said, I've never felt it so strong. I actually looked at the odds, and I never usually bet live rounds, but I actually made the rare look at Bet365 before Sunday.
Yeah.
But he was minus 125 with a one-shot lead, minus 125. And then I looked at the other guys there. Palmer, he's one shot back. It's 4.5 to 1.
I know.
It's kind of unbelievable. So even the sports books were basically saying this thing is going to be over in a hurry. But the picks were great. I mean, out of the 21 guys that I wrote up last week, 17 of them made it through the cut.
Yeah.
Ches Reavie should have made it through the cut. He took a disastrous back 9 for him to miss. And so, I mean, overall, the picks were great. For the $3, all my entries across the board there were profitable. 2 of my 3 cash games profited. It was tougher this week. You needed 6 of 6.
You absolutely did.
We did have Chappell. Chappell came through. I didn't write Chappell up, but he did come through on the optimal lineup in our first cash game. So I did use him there, and he missed the cut, and I didn't cash. So, I kind of got what I deserved for using the optimal lineup in that case. But overall, 2 of the 3 lineups that I put out there for the daily spin came through solid. So it was a really good week. We were in position by Friday afternoon for it to just be a home run kind of week. We just needed Spieth not to win this one time, and it could have been pretty huge for us.
I actually did have about 20% exposure to Spieth in GPPs of my hardcore core. 13 of 15 made the cut. 8 of them were in the top 25, which is pretty sick. I had a couple teams in contention, but Ches really screwed a couple of them big time. And then, if Ryan Palmer could have won it, I would have been
Yeah,
really
it would have been a nice
profitable.
shift
Yeah.
up by
Yep.
many more.
I also actually
hundreds
had Kyle Reifers, a little bit of him as kind of a 5% owned in GPPs as
Been
well. So
really solid this year. There's another guy who was in the Crystal Ball article, I think.
Yep.
Exactly. So just another one that you nailed on the head at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and actually he was kind of our secondary shot of the week. Not as important as obviously ours, but dude, I like you. I think you're an awesome golfer and everything, and you seem like a great guy, but don't ever wear those gray pants again.
Are we commenting on fashion now? Wow.
Dude, if your ass is going to sweat that much, it was embarrassing.
Now I remember. now I remember. Right all the way down the crack.
Oh, it's horrible. Just brutal. You can't do it, man.
It was pretty nice. Yeah.
So anyway,
right.
Wacky Wagers. Why don't you talk about? You got a story to go on a win.
Yes. So we talked in the last few weeks about the Clint Eastwood painting. I shamed my good friend Bo Bowman. Don't call him Berman. Out there because he said he put the Clint Eastwood painting up for some Masters gear, and I accepted it.
Right.
And then after the bet got going, he said, this is going to be too expensive to ship. I'm not going to do it. And I said, oh, okay, that's fine. Yep. And then I proceeded to talk about him live on the show for a bit. And then he felt bad, and as he does, I got probably about a dozen emails over the next few days saying that he felt bad and he was going to send the painting.
Okay.
So we went through this big ordeal about where he was going to send the painting. And I thought, well, it's not going to make sense for it to be sent to the house, because if it gets sent to the house and I'm at work, they're not going to be able to drop it off.
Right.
I'm going to have to go someplace to pick it up. It's going to be a pain. I'll just have it delivered directly to work. It's I'm not necessarily sure where I'm going to put it. The thing is huge. I mean, it's about this big. It's a little over 6 feet tall. It's a huge painting. And you guys are probably looking at pictures of it right now that Chip's going to put up.
It's amazing what technology can do.
So I said, all right, just ship the thing to the office. I'll more than likely be at my office at some point during the day. So if they call me ahead of time and let me know, I should be able to be there. They can drop it off. I'll keep it in the office. I'll figure out what I'm going to do, if I'm going to hang it on the office wall or what. So I get to work last Wednesday, and I get a phone call from the UPS guy. Hey, we can't drive into the parking lot over there. It's too small. We got this thing on an 18-wheeler. It weighs 164 pounds. And we're gonna have to go down the road. There's this warehouse about a half mile from my house. We're gonna have to take this thing down the road and drop it off there. Right. So can you come meet us over there? Okay, I guess I can do that. So they call me when they arrive. I drive down about a half mile away. It's raining. I get out of the car. I'm like, where is this thing? Where is this thing? So he opens up the back, and he's got this huge crate in the back. And I'm thinking, this is not going to fit into my car. I have a big car. I have a Chrysler 300, but it's not nearly big enough to haul this painting. I mean, I would need your truck pretty much to get this thing in here. So now we got a dilemma. I said, well, you can't possibly just get a little closer and park by the curb.
Right.
We get this thing out, carry it in. No, I'm not allowed. I can't do that.
It's impossible.
Can we? Do they not have? Does UPS only use 18-wheeler trucks to deliver small packages these days? What is going? We can't put this thing on just like a regular size UPS truck, No. Kevin James driving around the King of Queens and his little. No. Well, we can do that, but we have to charge you a redelivery fee. Well, what's the redelivery fee? Well, it's $75. I don't want to pay that. I mean, at this point, I'm thinking, maybe I may just not sign for this thing. I mean, just send it back. It seems like it's going to be a lot of inconvenience. But I said, well, why don't we get it down? Let's get it out. Let's see what this thing actually looks like. He said, okay. And so he gets it out, and he pulls it up, and I'm like, that does not weigh 164 pounds. It for sure doesn't. It's that big, so cumbersome for him to lift it up and get it. I mean, this might not be that big. So in my head, I'm thinking, there may be a plan here. Let's cut this thing out of the box, which I did. So we cut this thing out. We open it up, and it's wrapped up in a bag in the inside, and I'm holding on to it, and I'm thinking, it's about 25 to 30 pounds as far as the painting. I think if I could kind of hoist this thing up on the back of my shoulders, it'll look like I'm carrying a cross basically down the road, or a big wing. I'm thinking, I'm going to walk it back. I'm walking it back. Nice. So I put this thing up on my back in the rain, and I just start walking up the road in 4 lanes of traffic. Basically, I'm walking along the curb. I'm not even going to cross the road to where the sidewalk is. I'm just right along the tiny little Cars are pulling up. They're stopping. They're having to change lanes to get around me. If a gust of wind would have blown along, I would have blown across to Wisconsin. I would have taken off. It was like a wing across my back. So I hoof it up the road. I am just dripping down sweat in my work clothes. It's pouring off my face. The rain's coming down. I finally get this thing back to the office. I cut it open, and everybody is waiting in anticipation. I feel like it's a Christmas story when they're opening the Fragile package and they get the big lady's leg out of it. What is this thing? And you finally open it up and you get this almost like fluorescent colored Clint Eastwood painting sort of staring you down. And then I posted the picture on Twitter, and most of the reactions, I think, were just awestruck.
Yeah.
That is kind of awesome, was I think what one individual said. But I mean, it looks pretty cool. It's at the office right now. It may end up staying there and just being there for intimidation when I have other clients in.
Nice.
But it was pretty cool. The artist's name was Travis Watkins. We'll post his email address here on the webcast, and if you want, you can email him if you want to go check out some of his artwork. It's pretty good stuff, and Travis is also a veteran as well, so another good deal, kind of ties in with Memorial Day. So that was a wacky wager that we won, but I still felt like I kind of lost by having to carry it, although we got an amazing story out of it. So we got that. This last week's wacky wager, played with a guy who goes by the handle of, his name is Amateur Hour on Twitter, at Brother Cherry. And I took him down. We actually had 3 of the same guys on each of our teams, so it just came down to a 3-on-3 sort of situation. 2 of his guys made it through. All 3 of my other guys made it through. So I crushed him, which was great, which was a lot of fun. He's a pretty fun follow on Twitter. He's been very entertaining to talk to the last couple of days. And so I'm going to get my own little zip-up pullover from Pebble Beach from the U.S. Open back in 2010. So lots of fun with the wacky wagers. We'll keep it going this week. I'll start hitting people up tonight. Hopefully we'll get something pretty entertaining. We're starting to build up a pretty good supply of stuff here in the studio, and not all of it sucks. So I'm pretty excited about that. So there's wacky wagers.
All right. That was the most longest and detailed story I think I've ever heard, Zachary. I feel winded listening to it.
It was worth it.
So we'll preview this week's tournament. It's the Memorial Tournament at Muirfield Village Golf Club in Dublin, Ohio. 7,392 yards, par 72. Of course, Muirfield Village was built by Jack Nicklaus himself. A big-time field this week. A lot of the top players in the world, well, just about most of the top players in the world will be there. Another key point this week is it's a smaller field like it was last week for the DEAN and DeLuca, so there'll be about 122 guys in the field. So adjust accordingly when you're building your rosters. It allows you to be a little bit more aggressive because more guys will make the cut. A higher percentage of guys will make the cut. So key stats this week: strokes gained tee to green, strokes gained putting, birdies are better, par 4, par 5 scoring. You okay with that?
Yeah, I think so. The guys are definitely going to have to score. The par 5s are a little bit on the shorter side. So you don't have a 635-yard monster out there. So guys actually should be able to put up some decent numbers in terms of scoring on those holes.
So let's talk about, let's start at the top end.
We've got the top 3 names. It's pretty amazing. I don't know that I've ever seen a tournament before where the top 3 guys are all entering coming off of a win. It's
pretty tough to do.
Spieth won here this past weekend. Day took out the Players, or the Players Championship, and then Rory won over in Ireland at the Irish Open. So all of them coming in off of a win. And all of them, I think, are going to be highly owned this week. Day has not had a great tournament history here, which is really interesting. I mean, it reminds me very similarly of when he went into the Arnold Palmer. You looked at the history, you thought, wow, there's just really not that much here. Maybe this just isn't his event. And then he dominated. And then with the Players, he had a couple successful runs. He'd also had a couple of missed cuts there as well. And then he dominated. So is that going to happen again this week?
For those of you who don't know, this is as close to a home course advantage as you can have. He has a home in the area. His wife's family's from there, spends a lot of time in Ohio. So he's very familiar with the course, which doesn't make sense with his tournament history. But I think he's a brand new player now. He's better than he's ever been, which is saying a lot because he's always been good.
He's won 7 of his last 17 tournaments.
That's dominant.
Which in golf is incredible.
So if I were to pick one of those 3, I would lean toward Day. However, I think his ownership's going to be the highest of the 3. So I might be fading him completely in GPPs. What do you think of that?
Wow, going to play with fire. And usually what's been interesting with you is you've been the guy who's been on day. You've called for day at Arnold Palmer. You called for day at the Players where he won twice. So that is pretty bold there.
I haven't decided yet. I'm not saying for sure. And
I think that's important. If we look at it, if you're going to play a strategy, try to stick with it fairly consistently. It's something that I've talked about. It's a lot like poker. There's not one strategy that's going to win all the time, but what you need to do is find the strategy that works for you and then to stick with it. So if you're a guy who's going to just fade the highest, most expensive players week in and week out, just roll with that over time. Yeah. Because you know that throughout the season, you're going to get plenty of events where those guys miss. You don't want to be the guy who's always chasing. Well, this week I'm going to fade. This week I'm going to be in. I'm off and I'm on. Come up with a long-term kind of game plan. I'm going to fade the top 1, 2, 3 guys there every single week and know that a few weeks it's going to burn me, like last week when Spieth comes along. But many other times, one of those guys might miss the cut. A couple of those other guys, maybe one guy takes 12th, another guy takes 30th. Yeah. And then it's wide open because you didn't spend all your money on one of those guys right there. So, I think just being a little bit consistent with your plan week in and week out is going to help a lot, because then you're going to look at the field and you're just going to know right away. It's not going to be a dilemma for you. Well, do I throw in a few shares of this guy or not? You kind of know going in how you're going to play it. And the other way you can play it too, which I would look at, is just to pick the one that you think is going to be the guy this week and moving most of your shares in on that particular player. Because when you do that with GPPs, what you're going to do is you're going to give yourself the most opportunities to win when that guy really hits. Right. So it's like last week when you saw a handful of the experts who are 100% in on Spieth. Well, then the rest of those teams, you just had to hope that the other 5 guys could fill in somewhat, and you'd have a good shot. So I think that's another way to end up going as far as playing those top 3 guys. But dropping down, I actually think the highest owned guy in the whole field is going to be Hideki Matsuyama. Probably. With a 5th place finish last year, first place finish the year before that here, and then coming off of 4 straight finishes within the top 11. His game is just really sharp right now. And you save quite a bit of money dropping down to 10,600. So if you're going to fade those top 3, starting your team with a guy like Hideki, definitely cash games. He definitely fits well within cash games this week, even at that price. Sometimes they'll skip over that, but he's so consistent, and having a guy finish that highly in your cash game lineup can really help out if you do have a miscut. So I think Hideki's a great place to start this week. And speaking of cash games, Matt Kuchar comes in at a price that I like him to be at a lot more. I like him, $2,500 less than the top price guys, back to $9,900. I think he's the 7th highest price guy. I like him in this level because if you need a top 10 from Matt Kuchar, he's going to give you a top 10. If you need a win from Matt Kuchar, he's going to give you a top 10. Right? So I like him in cash games, but at $9,900, he doesn't necessarily have to win. So I like him at this price level. He'll be on a lot of my cash game teams. Yeah, definitely. Dropping down, who else are you liking, like in the value range? Anyone standing out to you that's drawing your attention? Well, there's a handful of guys. If we drop down into that 7,000 range or so, Mark Leishman is a guy I think I've been talking about almost every week. Had a nice little surge there towards the end of the weekend and finished up in the top 15 this last week, so that's great. I'm still waiting for like the big breakout week where he finally comes through and he gives us a top 5 type of finish, but the numbers are really there. He's really well balanced in terms of his tee to green game, in terms of his putting game. Yeah. He's got plenty of distance off the tee to handle the course. He scores well, so I like him a lot. He's done pretty well here over the years. I think he's maybe only missed like 1 cut and 7 tries, so that's a pretty nice place to start. I think he's down at 78 or 7,900 for the week. Yep. So I think that's a pretty nice value there if we're dropping down a little bit. Anybody in the 8,000s that you like? Well, I like at 7,500 to go completely contrarian is a guy that we faded completely last week, and it just kind of shows you how we can adjust from week to week. Right. Is Kevin Chappell? Yeah, I hated him last week. We did 9,600. I hated that price for him, and we knew he was going to be heavily owned, which he was. So we put the the fade stamp on him,
And he obliged and missed a 2-foot putt on his 36th hole to miss the cut.
He could do another shot of the week just for that.
And you know what? He didn't have a birdie in his final, 26 holes he played.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
He started out on fire.
Brutal.
He looked great, and then just completely fell off down the stretch.
So as a contrarian play, he burned a lot of people last week. So I'm back on him this week. I think he's a decent value play at that 7,500 price
I like
tag.
that too. Going back down to 7,400, I think a guy who's underpriced again is Charles Howell III,
right?
Coming off of another top 10 finish a couple of weeks back. He's guys just dominated. 13 top 25 finishes this year. I mean, he's on a pace. I don't know how many he's going to end up with, but he's probably going to lead the tour in top 25 finishes on the season just because of the sheer volume of events.
Right.
That he ends up playing compared to the guys, the stars who would be in the top 25 week in and week out.
Yep.
So he's made the cut here 4 straight times. He's only missed 3 on the season, and I think we can pretty much waive the one that he missed at the Players, just because a lot of different types of players end up missing at that course. So he's a guy that I like quite a bit there at 7,400.
At 7,300 is an interesting guy, Ryan Moore. Current form
is
hideous.
Awful, boy.
Tournament history,
great.
Amazing.
He is fantastic.
So it's
here.
like the ultimate in...
I know, and that's the thing this week. How much courage do you have on this guy?
What do you think that's going to do to his ownership?
It'll keep it in check, is what it'll do, because I think people are going to see miscut, and he crushed people at the Masters.
Oh,
so a lot of people played him at the Masters when he was at a real nice.
Well, and he
price.
hasn't barely missed either. He's been
bad,
awful. He's a couple 80s, I think, mixed in there in his last few events.
It's been awful. So it gets real tough this week. Do you make your move this week and just make the big buy and say, all right, I'm going to own 20 to 30% shares on them, or do we just? I think you have to own just a little bit. I think I'll own at least 5% in there, and see if I've got the courage to get up into that 20%.
Yeah, I feel like current form, it can come and go. It really on the drop of a hat. So. It's tournament history. Oftentimes, it takes a course that a guy plays well in.
Comes in,
to
he's
break
just
him out
feeling
of it.
better.
Yeah, he's going to break out of it eventually.
Yeah.
This would be a time that I would guess that he will. So I'm going to own probably 15% of
That's
Ryan
reasonable.
Moore.
I think anywhere between like 5 to 15 would be very reasonable. And if you were looking to be contrarian, up closer to 25% would be the aggressive.
And this isn't a bad week because such a high percentage of the field is going to make the cut. And at that price tag, he doesn't need to do a whole hell of a lot to outproduce his price, make the cut basically. And I think he's a talented enough guy to make a run and make it worth it. So
for sure,
I like him. Dropping down a little bit more, anybody else on your wish list that you want to go with?
Well, there's a couple of guys down there. I think a guy who, I don't know why I didn't write him up last week. I'd written him up the week before. He did well.
Who's that?
Was Lahiri.
Oh, yeah.
He's been making cuts all year long. I'd even been saying, I said, at some point he's going to break out. He's going to give us the top 10. And I even, as I was sitting there writing up all my guys this week, I thought, I got to find a way to get Lahiri in. I got to get Lahiri in. And I just didn't end up working him in. And then, damn it, he goes. And, I can see him making his run on Sunday. He ends up taking 6th place.
Yep.
So he's just been real steady. He hasn't been great. That was the first real move that he made. But he's just a consistent cut maker. And it's a nice price to get a consistent cut maker at 7,200. So, I mean, the odds are he probably finishes in 40th place. He doesn't really hurt you. He doesn't really damage you. Anyway, he doesn't really elevate you that much above the field. But he does have the potential, as we've seen at some of the bigger events, like the PGA Championship and then this past weekend at the D&D. He can go pretty low and put up a pretty nice finish. So I think that's a guy there. And I still don't think that a lot of people are necessarily going to gravitate towards him. So I still think you get a lot of value at 7,200 for Lahiri this week.
Okay. Dropping down into the sleeper range, anyone standing out to you in the lower dollars that you
There's a couple of guys. I think David Hearn, he's been playing really well. He started the season just atrociously.
Yep.
He couldn't make a cut at all. Now he's made about 6 of his last 8 or so. And the finishes are improving. A lot of top 30 finishes along the way, which if you're getting into the 6,000s, top 30 finishes, that's huge. It's way outperforming a price for a guy who's down at 6,700. He's made 3 out of 4 cuts here. I think the 3 that he made were all in the top 30.
Top 30, yeah.
And last year he missed, which I know probably hurt a lot of folks. But I like him this week. The form is there. The price is solid. If you're looking to put a high-priced guy in the top, you're going to have to come down into this range. guy like Hearn gives you a little bit of salary cap.
I was high on him last week. He was in my hardcore core, and I like him a lot. Yep. The only thing that concerns me a little bit about Muirfield is it a longer track than has been the case over Hearn's last month or so. So that concerns me a little bit. So I'm not as high on him this week as I was last week. But yeah, you can't really argue with the form. Anyone else down below in that 6K range?
Well, I'm going to take a little bit of a waiver on a couple guys. I'll just give one here to talk about. But Johnson Wagner is still below 6,000 this week. He finished 34th this past week, and he had a nice finish the week before that. I just don't see how he can be below 6,000. He's made, I think, 5 straight cuts. He's a streaky player. He's a guy who will make 4 or 5 straight cuts and then miss 3 or 4 straight cuts. So he's never a guy that I feel terribly comfortable with. I'm not going to tell you to roster this guy in a cash game because that's certainly going to be a little bit risky. But the only time he's ever not made it to the weekend here was due to a withdrawal on an event. So the other 4 times he's also made it through here. So I think you get quite a bit of value in going down to 5,900 and putting him. I can see me owning probably 10% this week for Johnson Wagner. Maybe a little bit more if I get frisky by tomorrow, depending on how many of those guys at the top I want to add in. Right. That's the balance of it. I can't just go through and say, well, I want to have all 5 of these top guys at real high percentages. If you do that, you have to go down to the bottom and say, well, if I'm going to do that, I mean, I need to own a bunch of these guys at a pretty high percentage as well to make all the salaries work. So, so I definitely will take a shot down there. Is there anybody down in that garbage pit range that you got your eye on?
The last month or two, I've been going more with a balanced approach. I've been fading the top end guys most every week.
Truncating your view.
I do. So I don't like a lot of the guys down in the 6K range. I've had quite a bit of success with that middle range, and I will do the same this week. Like I said, I like Chappell. I like Russell Knox in that middle. I like Daniel Berger. So I'm going to be kind of grouping the high 7s and low 8s.
Maybe just grab one higher guy and then kind of come into the middle range.
Down in the 7s and 8s. The one guy I guess I might lean toward would be KJ Choi.
6,000.
At 6,000,
Tremendous record here over the years.
He does. He popped up high on our sportsbook odds versus pricing.
He's only missed like 1 cut out of his last
big time value.
Here,
Doesn't have tremendous current form coming in, but I think for 6,000 in an event where it's going to be easier to make the cut, I think he's reasonable if you want to go stars and scrubs too.
Yeah, he'll definitely make some of my rosters this week.
Cool. Should we shift gears now from the Memorial to the European Tour and talk about a couple guys on the Euro Tour event?
Yeah, we'll just get to a couple of them. At the top, it's not quite as deep of an event.
No, not as last week, no.
A lot of unfamiliar names, and that's where doing the research is going to be helpful, but there's just going to be some names that it's going to be a real stretch on. Just
for sure.
Local guys that are playing from the area who are in on the tournament. Maybe they've played 1 or 2 events on the Euro Tour all year. So you could see guys who are, ranked 1,000, 2,000 in the world that are playing this week. So it is definitely going to be a tricky field to work with. But there are a few names. It's a really long course from reading over some of the stuff that Perry was putting together. Perry did a great job this week. He's just finishing up the column right now, but I already saw a little bit of the research over the weekend. It's a really long course.
Sure.
It's like 7,600 yards. So look for guys who've got a little bit of distance in their game, and then obviously form as well is going to be a huge player this week. Is there anybody here that you liked that stood out for you? Since you were the killer on Euro Tour last week.
I did kind of kill it last week. I doubled up in GPPs. I did actually write an article on the website now if you want to subscribe to the Euro package. Kind of my takeaways from week 1 of the European, what I found happened in the events, talked about ownership.
And if you like events where the top 5 guys each day just fall off a cliff.
That's kind of what happened.
What happened every day of the event over the weekend.
Crazy.
So anybody who was at the top on a given day on the leaderboards for GPPs fell all the way off it by the next day. It was pretty entertaining to watch.
One guy that I had quite a bit of exposure to last week was Tyrrell Hatton. I like him again this week. Great player, good current form. This week he's priced obviously a little bit higher at 10,200, but a much weaker field. I have quite a bit of exposure to him. I also like Peter Hansen Swedish guy has had success in this tournament before, good current form coming in. So those will be two guys that I'll be leaning toward in the upper range. Any guys pop out to you that you kind of like?
The obvious one here is going to be Alexander Noren. He's won this event twice over the years. He won it last year. I think he won it 3-4 years ago as well.
Yep.
He's got 4 top 10s here. He's played the event 11 times over the years. So definitely a guy who I think a lot of people probably will own.
Absolutely.
But it's such a weak field this week. You're not going to be able to drop down and grab a guy at like 5,000, because I think that's where it goes all the way down to 5,000.
Yeah.
And most of the first 50 names or so, there's not much.
Just local Swedish guys at 5,000.
Yeah,
coming off the street.
And a handful of European Tour guys who are 3 for 14 in terms of making the cut on the year. So
yeah.
You're going to need some quality. He's a quality name up. Ricard Karlberg had another nice finish this past weekend. He's 7 for 8 on the season. He does have a top 10 finish here.
Yeah.
He's made the cut 3 straight times. So another young player that is worth watching. And then
I like Pablo Larrazabal.
I was just going to say that was going to be the other guy.
Week.
You cut me off.
Oh,
on that.
sorry.
That's all right. It's all right. No, you got it. No, you got it. You got it.
Sorry about that.
All right.
Is there anyone else besides Pablo, or were you just on him and going to ride him all the way?
You know, I those are the guys that I started with.
Okay.
And those are kind of the 3 guys that I started with. And then my process beyond that was to start kind of looking in the lower range and trying to find just a handful of guys in terms of who's had really good form this year, or somebody who's just had a couple of decent finishes here. Because you're not going to find a whole lot other than that. There's not going to be a great big PGA page that's got dozens and dozens of different statistics and things on there. So my advice with the Euro Tournament is to tread kind of lightly until you really get to know some of these players, because the fields are not that deep.
Well, especially this week.
Right.
I mean, once you get to bigger European events, but this is, I mean...
You'll see a couple names at the top. I mean, Henrik Stenson is here. But yeah, most of the names here is a little bit of a weaker field.
Can I give you one name in the 6,000 range?
Okay.
A Swedish kid from the neighborhood, Sebastian Soderberg at 6,000. I kind of like. I've done some research and I like him, so I'll just throw him out for a GPP flyer if you're interested.
Yeah.
I'll save the rest for my hardcore core.
So it should be entertaining. It should be a lot of fun, and definitely check it out. I would say just take a tiny amount of your bankroll into it this week, just for fun, just to start getting to know the players. I would just do your research. Take this first 3 to 4 weeks to just start doing your research. Look over the Who's Hot page. Look over some of these tournament histories, and just start staying up late at night at 11 or 12 at night, and watch until 3 or 4 in the morning. Although last week it didn't start till 3 in the morning. 4 in the morning, and here I am at 2 a.m. thinking,
you were all geared up, ready to go.
It's
and you got pregame.
It's 2 a.m. and they're running reruns of the college women's golf finals between Stanford and Washington.
Oh, what's wrong with that?
Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing at all.
Right, fair enough.
Nothing at all.
So that'll do it for this week. Be sure to check us out at fantasygolfinsider.com. Email us with any questions. We're real good about getting back to you on strategy, roster composition, bankroll management, any of that. You can reach us at info@fantasygolfinsider.com. Check us out on Twitter at fantasygolfers. Zach usually does Periscope on Wednesday nights, so be sure to check him out on Wednesday nights. Otherwise, that will do it for the Memorial Tournament this week.
And the Nordea Masters.
So good luck to everybody, and we will see you next week.
Good luck.